Alright, what's going on, guys? It's fucking Horse Beef here. I forgot my name for a second, but just believe me, this is my last video I will be making on Israel Adesanya, at least until I'm given another reason to, like whether that be he's booked to fight somebody and I want to predict that fight, or he does fight somebody and I want to break down said fight, or of course, unless he gets himself into some more hot water again and this story is interesting enough. But pretty much I want to wrap up this whole Israel Adesanya saga with this video, and I would like to point out the hypocrisy that I've recently noticed with his road rage incident and the following statements where he's talked about pressing charges. And I would like to point out that the main point here isn't even the fact that Israel Adesanya has really sparked me into making these videos. It's the double standard that I believe is highlighted by these recent events, and that's ultimately what I want to point out and really hammer home the point that racism is messed up no matter which way it goes, right? I'm not one of these dudes, one of these edgy people, one of these like edgy Redditors who says bullshit like racism is based and all this stuff. I don't believe that personally. I understand if you want to say that as a joke, that's perfectly fine. But I genuinely do not agree with racism in any capacity, right? Towards anyone, I think it's extremely low IQ. I really do think that if you are a racist person, in general, that is indicative of a low IQ, and that goes for anyone regardless of what group of people you hate. It really does not matter. It's unacceptable whichever way it goes, and that is the main point here. And the reason why I have to state that is because there have been some comments I've been reading recently saying something like this channel is at this point just like an Israel Adesanya hate page. But I think a lot of you may miss the point in my videos. Yes, there have been videos where I poke fun and I just generally make fun of Israel Adesanya for some of the things in the past that he said, and that is generally because I myself find Israel Adesanya to be very unlikable and worthy of criticism. And it really shouldn't matter what skin color he has, because I've also had comments like this insisting that I'm racist simply for making videos about Israel Adesanya and John Jones simply because they're black. And I mean, if that's really all you care about, if you really see color to that extent where that's the thought that comes to your mind, as if my criticisms of John Jones and Israel Adesanya aren't valid, that you need to bring up the skin color. I mean, I didn't think of the skin color before making the video, so why must you bring up their skin color as a way to try and tear me down and paint me in a certain light, which is just not true. And aside from the seriousness of this topic, I would also like to point out some interesting points that he made here. I mean, the first comment this guy made was one MMA channel I'll never watch, and then says, so I'll block you, proceeds to make multiple comments and replies on this long thread on this particular video. I think this was the one about Israel Adesanya and his fans making excuses, and then he claims I'm deleting his comments, calls me racist scum, and also claims that I'm an average black American hating on an African. We are used to it, but we're not surprised. You former slaves have lost your connection to the motherland. Hopefully you guys get it right. So he assumed my ethnicity, which I've never been accused of being black before. So that's a new one. That's definitely a new one. But I just can't get over the sense of victimhood that you can deduce from these types of comments, man. It's just no way to live life, to have this much hate in your heart because of events that took place before you were even born. I hope that at some point you're able to get over this sense of victimhood and really just focus on personal growth, because like I said, this is no way to live life, man. And in my research, I also happened to come across this guy's video claiming that Dricus du Plessis is the most openly racist athlete in the world, I guess, and in the midst of all of it, proves himself to be quite racist himself. So let's take a look at that.
Black African champions that were born and raised in Africa. Anybody that has above a 6th grade level of education understands why that's problematic, as white South Africans only ended up in South Africa due to generations of colonization, slaughter, and pillaging.
Yes, just like any white, black, brown, Asian person who claims to be American and or Canadian, because guess what, man? Most of the Western world was built off of those horrible atrocities, but at the end of the day, dwelling on the past is no way to move forward and only keeps you in this box of victimhood.
only to be followed by apartheid, which literally ended not that long ago, due in part to the great Nelson Mandela. So about a month after Drickus said this,
I'm the African fighter in the UFC. Myself and Cameron, we breathe the African air. We wake up in Africa every day. We train in Africa, we're African born, we're African raised. We still reside in Africa, we train out of Africa.
I mean, there's genuinely nothing wrong or factually incorrect about what Drickus just said. So, come on, man.
Then Drickus, or should I say Dripless, because this man dresses like a real estate agent for trailer parks.
So whether you find that joke to be funny or not is besides the point. Personally, I don't think it's a very good joke, but I'm not offended by it whatsoever. But let's just say the roles were reversed, and someone like Drickus du Plessis said that Israel Adesanya was dressed like a real estate agent for the hood. You know what I mean? I feel like the reaction would be a little bit different, but playing off of white stereotypes for jokes is, of course, socially acceptable. The other way around, we cry and make victims of ourselves, of course.
Moments after this encounter, Dripless du Plessis walks out of the ring, shakes Donald Trump's hand.
Oh, case closed. He's a racist. He shook Donald Trump's hand. Oh, no, even though Adesanya did the same thing.
Pulls up to the post-fight press conference and starts playing the victim, immediately backtracking on his words and all of a sudden acting like he didn't say anything wrong.
In reality, all Drickus ended up doing was backing up his original statement and reiterating what he actually meant by what he said, instead of the twisted version that people like this individual like to put out there in the world, which is just not true.
I think many of you know where this story is heading. Some UFC fans are calling Israel Adesanya classless, while Dripless du Plessis is a gentleman who did nothing wrong. This man threw jabs at 3 African kings who was minding their own business, then curled up in a ball like a little worm.
I mean, with statements like that, clearly these particular people are just trying to rewrite history altogether. It's just extremely dishonest. The man stood by every word that he said and never changed what he said, right? His sentiment remained the same from the beginning until the end, really. You know, up until he ended up choking out Israel Adesanya. After the fight, everything remained the same, right? The man has never changed his tune. He's never changed anything. It's always been about geography, and that's all.
After receiving a little bit of pushback, it's a tale as old as time. White people do or say some crazy shit to another group of people, then as soon as someone from that group says something back, they're immediately vilified.
Yes, immediately vilified for essentially being horribly racist against Drickus du Plessis after Drickus made a comment about geography.
Yo, this is one of the most important fights in sports history. When Israel Adesanya faces Dripless du Plessis for the UFC World Championship, this will be one of the few moments in time where a racist white man will face physical consequences for his ignorance and not be able to press charges. Izzy, you're one of the greatest men to throw a punch or kick that has ever existed. Your history is as rich as the African blood that runs through your veins. And I can't wait for you to show Dripless what runs through his veins.
Whatever that means.
But aside from that, all it really takes is a look through this comment section to see where this guy's head really is at. So first up, we have someone who admittedly, yes, worded their comment in a very interesting fashion, and his response is, "Your neurodivergence is showing." So I guess it's okay to insult people with some kind of learning disabilities, I guess, but as long as they're not black. I guess if they were black, that would be wrong according to this guy. But then the one just below that clearly didn't pass the 6th grade, and then this guy says, "Guess what my degree is in? I'll send you a lifetime supply of mayonnaise, unseasoned chicken, and stepsister porn if you can get it right." So playing off of more white stereotypes, I guess that's his way of getting back at the colonizers. And then we have his responses to 2 apparent South Africans, where he responds in similar fashion. First off, he says, "I think I'm going to take the side of literal historical facts over some random," and then he censors it, but he calls this person a racial slur. With colonized mind. Obviously, you can deduce what word that is if you're knowledgeable of certain racial slurs and you know what word that is. Aside from that, you have no idea where I'm from or my family's history. Stop meat riding people who literally couldn't give less of a fuck about you. I mean, he's doing the same thing to Israel Adesanya all throughout this video, and I mean, that's just a crazy statement to make after making the video that he made. But dude, I'm South African. Go and look at our national rugby team, the Springboks. I don't think you understand our culture. Drickus is being patriotic and nothing more. South Africa is made up of people who have native ancestry and ancestry that is not native. Afrikaans people are just as much South African as any other in our country. Afrikaans culture is a huge part of the larger South African culture. It sounds crazy to us to even try and create a divide because of ancestry. The Dutch are not the Afrikaans. Lol. And then he says, it sounds like you're just brainwashed by colonization. The majority of people, both in and out of my family from South Africa, heavily disagree. Okay. Open a history book. Plus, no one said that he is not African. It's the fact that he thinks that he's more African than Israel Francis Kamaru because he still breathed African air. You're brainwashed as fuck if you think, or if you can't see why that's insane. I mean, putting that in quotations, more African, when Drickus never even said more African is crazy. And that is really a big part of how Drickus's words have been twisted to a crazy degree, because this more African point doesn't even exist. But aside from this absolute doofus, the main hypocrisy is with Israel Adesanya himself. Now, to press charges on a man and make the claim that he randomly started hurling racial slurs at you, as I said in my last video, it is reminiscent of the Jussie Smollett situation where he claimed to be racially abused and then was found to be a liar eventually, and actually, I believe, served prison time as a result of this lie. And I would be surprised if many of you haven't actually heard of this situation. If you have not, I suggest you read up on it. But this story from Israel Adesanya, it's not as extreme, right? He's not claiming that anything super outlandish happened, but yeah, to press charges on the man for racial abuse when there's really no evidence of that happening, or even complaining about it in general after we have had to witness example after example of you essentially racially abusing Drickus du Plessis.
I never ever did that to him. I never discredited him as an African. I just, okay, there you are, cool. You want to make a fight, cool. But the fact that as a fucking cracker to tell me who the fuck I am.
I mean, that's just pretty blatant. Does it require much explanation?
And that was exactly it. You never change that. You can't change that.
I will slay you, Impossible. Pig. Shut up, pink fit.
You can't change that.
And here we have another use of a racial slur, which Drickus du Plessis once again does not even acknowledge or play the victim over, which he very well could, but of course, most people wouldn't take him seriously and just point to colonization as a reason for Izzy's racism, which is great.
A little bit, yeah. And he said something about my servants, and that's rich coming from someone who owned slaves back in the day.
Damn, Drickus du Plessis is a goddamn vampire, man. This dude owned slaves back in the day. That's amazing. And this is yet another example of holding Drickus du Plessis accountable for the sins of his father. But at the end of the day, if Israel Adesanya is pressing charges for this apparent racial abuse, whether it's true or it's not, that is absolutely his right to do so. If it did happen and he does press charges, like I said, if the guy is guilty, then that's perfectly fine, because as I've stated, I don't agree with racism, nor do I think racism is based. I'm okay with some jokes here and there, but genuine racism to me is just an evil thing overall, and I think there's no place for it in this world. And that goes for people like Israel Adesanya and Kamaru Usman stoking the flames of racism while talking about bringing an end to it, or as Usman kept saying, bringing an end to the perpetuation of racial divide, even though you are literally doing the exact opposite by constantly bringing up race in a topic that really didn't include race to begin with. It was all about geography. And now we're just at a situation where we can look at this objectively, look at the double standard, look at the reaction online to what Israel Adesanya has said. I guess maybe he's played his hand a few too many times, because you can see the reactions a little bit negative towards Israel Adesanya pressing charges on this guy. And honestly, for good reason. At the end of the day, I don't hate Israel Adesanya. He's a legend of the sport, as is Kamaru Usman, as is every fighter that I mention in a negative light here. But if you would like to hop in my comment section and call me a racist because I've once again criticized Israel Adesanya, think about the Ian Gary situation. The MMA community at large did not hesitate but to lambast Ian Gary with all types of insults, and it didn't really seem like anyone batted an eye at it. But the second that is Israel Adesanya, and for even better reasons too, man. I would say that what Israel Adesanya has been doing for the last year or so in stoking these flames of racial divide is far more impactful than anything that Ian Gary has said or done in his personal life with his girlfriend or wife. Yet everyone seemed to have a problem with it, even though it only concerns him and his wife. Yet when it comes to calling out Israel Adesanya for his misdeeds, we have to start talking about race. No. Everyone is worthy of criticism. Doesn't matter what you look like, what you sound like, where you're from. Does not matter. I will criticize whoever I believe is worthy of it. And same thing goes for myself. If I'm worthy of criticism, feel free to criticize me. But to just put this veil of you're a racist, right, over all my content without actually taking into account the words that I'm saying is just extremely ignorant. But like I said, guys, I don't censor any comments. You can feel free to say all types of bullshit like that in my comment section all you want. I'm really okay with it at the end of the day, because I am open to criticism like always. But anyway, guys, just know once again this will be my last video on Israel Adesanya for a while. I just wanted to close out this whole saga and really just get to the bottom of why I think this whole situation is just really messy, full of hypocrisy, and worth criticizing. But I do appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you on the next one.